The wind moved slowly across the empty mining world of Kara-9. Dust rolled over the ground like a gray ocean. Old metal towers stood everywhere, broken and silent. Once, this planet was full of workers, machines, and loud engines. But now most of it was abandoned. Only a few lights still worked in the far distance. Near the edge of the mining zone stood a small repair hangar. Inside that hangar worked a human named Ethan Cole. Ethan was a quiet man. He did not talk much with the other workers. Most people only knew two things about him. First, he was one of the best mechanics in the sector. Second, he liked to be alone. Some said he had been a soldier in the past, a veteran from a terrible space war. But Ethan never spoke about those days. Now he spent his time fixing damaged cargo ships and broken mining machines. That night, Ethan finished repairing a small transport drone. Sparks faded from his welding torch as he turned it off. He looked at the old clock on the wall. "Too late," he muttered softly. Most workers had already left the area hours ago. The mining company had slowly shut down operations on Kara-9. Soon the planet would be empty. Ethan stepped outside the hangar. Cold air touched his face as the wind blew dust across the metal ground. The sky above was dark, but distant stars still shined clearly. For a moment everything was quiet. Then Ethan heard something. A sound, very soft, very small. He stopped walking. At first, he thought it was just the wind passing through broken pipes. That happened often on this empty planet. But then he heard it again. A weak cry. Ethan slowly turned his head. "Sounded like a child," he said quietly. But that made no sense. There were no children on Kara-9. This place was only for miners and repair crews. The sound came again. A small, trembling cry carried by the wind. Ethan followed the sound carefully. His boots made soft metal echoes as he walked across the empty yard. The cry led him toward the old cargo field. Several ships had crashed there during the storm 3 nights ago. Most of the wreckage had already been cleared away, but one ship remained. It was half buried in dust and broken metal. The ship looked strange. Its design was smooth and curved, not like human ships. Ethan frowned. "Alien transport," he whispered. He moved closer. The metal door was cracked open. Smoke marks covered one side of the ship. The cry came again. "Definitely." From inside. Ethan hesitated for a moment. Alien ships were dangerous. Broken power cores, strange technology, unknown systems. But the sound inside was weak. Lonely. Scared. Ethan slowly pulled the door open. The metal groaned loudly. Inside the dark ship, dim emergency lights blinked weakly. The room smelled like burned circuits. Ethan stepped carefully over broken panels. Then he saw them. In the corner of the cargo room sat 2 small figures. They were tiny. Children. Alien children. The twins had pale blue skin that softly reflected the red emergency lights. Their large silver eyes looked wide with fear. Thin glowing lines moved slowly across their arms like soft light under their skin. One twin held the other tightly. Both of them were shaking. They looked hungry, cold, and exhausted. For a long moment, Ethan simply stood there in silence. The twins stared at him. They were clearly afraid. Ethan slowly knelt down, keeping his movements calm. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The twins did not understand his words, but they heard the calm tone in his voice. One of them made a weak sound, almost like a question. Ethan carefully removed his thick work jacket and placed it on the floor near them. "You must be freezing," he said gently. The smaller twin slowly pulled the jacket closer. Just then, something strange happened. A small metal tool on the floor suddenly lifted into the air. Ethan blinked. The tool floated for a few seconds, then dropped back to the ground. The twins looked frightened, as if they did not mean to do it. Ethan stared quietly. "Telekinesis," he whispered. These children were not ordinary aliens. But before Ethan could think more about it, a distant sound reached his ears. Engines. Heavy engines. Ethan quickly stood and looked out through the cracked ship door. Several dark ships were flying low across the mining fields. Searchlights moved across the ground. They were scanning the crash sites. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Those ships did not belong to the mining company. They were hunter vessels. And they were getting closer. Ethan slowly looked back at the frightened twins. In that moment he understood something important. These children were not simply lost. They were being hunted. The twins watched him carefully. Ethan took a slow breath. Then he gently picked them up. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I've got you." Outside, the hunter ships continued, searching the ruins. But now the alien twins were no longer alone. Ethan carried the alien twins through the dark mining yard as quietly as he could. The wind blew dust across the ground, covering his footsteps. In the distance, the hunter ships continued to scan the crash sites with bright white lights. Ethan kept his head low. His small repair hangar was not far away, but every step felt dangerous. The twins stayed silent in his arms. They were very light, almost too light, like fragile birds. One of them held tightly onto Ethan's shirt, while the other looked around with wide, silver eyes. They were scared. Anyone could see that. Ethan finally reached the back door of the hangar. He quickly typed the security code and slipped inside. Door closed behind him with a quiet hiss. For a moment, Ethan stood still and listened. No alarms. No strange sounds. The hangar was safe. He slowly placed the twins on a soft chair near his work table. The room was warm compared to the cold wind. Outside, old tools hung on the walls, and small machines rested on metal shelves. The twins looked around with quiet curiosity. It was clear they had never seen a human repair shop before. Ethan grabbed a clean blanket from a storage box and gently wrapped it around them. "You're safe here," he said softly. Even though he knew they probably didn't understand him, the smaller twin shivered slightly but slowly relaxed inside the blanket. Ethan walked to a small kitchen corner and filled 2 cups with warm water. He also opened a simple food pack used by miners. When he returned, the twins watched him carefully. He placed the food on the table and stepped back. "It's okay," he said. "You can eat." The twins looked at each other. Then slowly, one of them reached forward and touched the food. A moment later, they began eating quickly, like they had not eaten for many hours. Ethan leaned against the wall and watched quietly. Something about them made his chest feel heavy. They were just children. Children alone on a dangerous planet. Outside, the hunter ships moved closer. Ethan turned on a small monitor connected to an outside camera. The screen showed the dark sky above the mining field. 3 black ships floated slowly over the ruins. Searchlights moved across the ground like giant eyes. "They're looking for you," Ethan said quietly. The twins continued eating, but suddenly, one of them looked nervous again. And then something strange happened. A small metal bolt on Ethan's work table slowly lifted into the air. Ethan noticed it immediately. The bolt floated for several seconds, spinning gently in the air. Then it dropped to the table with a tiny sound. The twins looked frightened again. Ethan rubbed his chin slowly. "So, you can move things with your mind," he said quietly. Telekinesis was rare even among advanced alien species. If these children had that ability, they were not ordinary. Ethan looked at them more carefully now. Their glowing skin patterns, their bright silver eyes, their strange power. Who were they? Before he could think more about it, a loud voice suddenly came through the outside speakers in the mining yard. "Attention. This is a security search operation. All workers remain inside your buildings. Do not interfere." Ethan's eyes narrowed. That was not a mining company message. Those ships definitely did not belong here. He turned off the monitor quickly. If the hunters searched every building, they might eventually reach his hangar. And if they found the twins, Ethan did not want to imagine what would happen. He walked to the back of the hangar and opened a hidden storage room. Inside were old engine parts and broken machines stacked high. It was messy, dark, and perfect for hiding something. Ethan returned to the twins. "Listen," he said calmly. "I need you to stay very quiet." Of course, they did not understand the words, but they understood his serious tone. He gently guided them into the storage room and made a small safe space between the machines. The twins sat together inside the blanket. Their glowing eyes looked up at him. For a moment, Ethan remembered something from long ago. A memory from the war. Children hiding during bombing raids. The same fear, the same silence. Ethan shook the memory away. Then he heard something outside. Heavy footsteps. Someone had landed near the hangar. Ethan slowly walked back into the main workshop and grabbed a metal wrench from the table. The hangar door shook. Slightly. A loud knock followed. Boom. Boom. A cold voice called from outside. "Open the door." Security. Inspection. Ethan took a slow breath. Behind him, hidden in the dark storage room, the alien twins waited quietly. The hunter ships had finally arrived. The loud knock on the hangar door echoed through the quiet building. Boom. Open the door. Security inspection. The cold voice repeated from outside. Ethan stood in the middle of the workshop, holding the heavy wrench in his hand. His eyes moved slowly toward the small storage room where the alien twins were hiding behind the old engine parts. They had to stay quiet. Very quiet. Ethan placed the wrench back on the table and wiped his hands on his work jacket. He tried to look calm as he walked toward the door. Another knock came, harder this time. "Open the door now." Ethan pressed the control button. The large metal door slowly slid open. Two tall alien soldiers stood outside. Their dark armor reflected the hangar lights. Strange symbols glowed softly on their chest plates. Behind them, Ethan could see one of the black hunter ships floating in the sky. One of the soldiers stepped forward. "Human," he said in a deep voice. "We are searching this area for survivors from the crash site." Ethan crossed his arms. "There were crashes 3 nights ago," he replied calmly. "Most wreckage was already cleared." The second soldier looked around the hangar carefully. His helmet visor scanned the room with a faint blue light. "Did you enter any wrecked ships tonight?" The soldier asked. Ethan shrugged slightly. "I fix machines," he said. "I don't explore broken alien ships." The first soldier took a slow step forward and looked deeper into the workshop. For a moment, Ethan felt his heart beat harder. Storage room door was half open. If the soldier walked a few more steps, he might see inside. But the soldier stopped. "Remain inside your building," the alien said coldly. "This search is important." Then the two soldiers turned and walked away. The hangar door closed again. Ethan let out a quiet breath. That was close, he whispered. He waited several minutes, watching the outside cameras. The soldiers moved to the next building in the mining yard. When Ethan was sure they were gone, he walked to the storage room. The twins were still sitting quietly under the blanket. Their silver eyes looked up at him. "You did good," Ethan said softly. The smaller twin tilted her head, as if trying to understand his voice. Ethan knelt down beside them. "You can come out now." The twins slowly stepped into the workshop again. They looked around the room with curious eyes. Then something strange happened. One of the twins suddenly touched a small broken tablet device on Ethan's work table. The screen flickered. Symbols appeared across the glass surface. Ethan frowned. "That thing hasn't worked in months," he said. But the symbols kept changing. Lines of alien language moved across the screen. The twins watched the tablet carefully. It was clear they understood what they were seeing. Ethan leaned closer. "Can you read that?" The twins looked at each other. Then one of them gently pressed a glowing finger onto the screen. The tablet translated the alien text into a basic trade language. Ethan's eyes widened as the words appeared. Astrira Imperial Transport Royal Passengers on Board Status. storyAlien. Ethan felt a chill run down his back. Royal passengers? He whispered. He looked slowly at the twins again. They did not look like soldiers or explorers. They looked like frightened children. But now Ethan realized something important. These were not just any alien children. Before he could say anything else, his communication device suddenly beeped. Ethan picked it up. The screen showed a familiar name, Mara. Ethan smiled slightly. Mara was an old friend, a space trader who traveled between many star systems. If anyone knew about alien species, it was her. He activated the call. Mara's face appeared on the screen. She had short red hair and sharp green eyes. "Ethan," she said, "I heard Carinine had some strange visitors tonight. Black hunter ships. What's going on?" Ethan hesitated. Then he turned the screen toward the twins. Mara's smile disappeared instantly. Her eyes became wide. "Ethan, where did you find them?" she asked quietly. "In a crashed ship," Ethan replied. "Why?" Mara leaned closer to her screen, studying the twins carefully. After a long moment, she spoke again. "Ethan, listen to me very carefully." Her voice was serious now. "Those children are from the Astrira Empire." Ethan blinked. "I guess something like that," he said. Mara shook her head slowly. "No, you don't understand." She took a deep breath. "Those are not just children. They are the royal twins of the Astrira Empress." Ethan felt the room become very quiet. "The royal twins?" he repeated. Mara nodded. "The most important children in the Astrira Empire. If they disappear, an entire war could start." Ethan slowly looked at the twins again. They were sitting quietly beside his work table, still small, still scared, still just children. But now Ethan understood the real danger. The hunter ships outside were not simply searching for survivors. They were hunting the future rulers of a galactic empire. And somehow, the lonely human mechanic had become their protector. Ethan stood silently in the workshop, staring at the alien twins. Mara's words still echoed in his mind. Royal twins of the Astrira Empire. That meant the children sitting in his small repair hangar were not ordinary aliens. They were the future rulers of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Ethan rubbed his forehead slowly. "This just keeps getting better," he muttered. On the communication screen, Mara was still watching carefully. "Ethan, you need to understand how serious this is," she said. "If the hunters find them, those children will disappear forever." Ethan crossed his arms. "Why would anyone want to hunt royal children?" he asked. Mara sighed. "Power," she answered simply. "If the royal twins are gone, someone else can take control of the empire." Ethan looked again at the twins. They were sitting quietly near his workbench, holding the blanket together. They didn't understand the conversation, but they could feel the tension in the room. The smaller twin slowly walked closer to Ethan. She looked up at him with bright, silver eyes. For a moment Ethan felt something strange. Trust. The child trusted him completely. That feeling made something heavy move inside Ethan's chest. He had not felt something like that in many years. Mara's voice broke the silence again. "Ethan, you need to get them off that planet," she said. "Carinine isn't safe anymore." Ethan looked at the outside monitor. The hunter ships were still flying above the mining fields. Their searchlights moved slowly across the ground. "They've blocked the sky," Ethan replied. "Nothing leaves this planet without them seeing it." Mara thought for a moment, then hide them until morning, she said. "I'll come to Carinine with my cargo ship. My ship has a stealth drive. I might be able to get them past the hunters." Ethan nodded. That might work. But before he could say anything else, a loud rumbling sound came from outside. Ethan quickly looked at the monitor. A large black hunter ship was landing directly in the mining yard. More soldiers stepped out. This time there were many of them. Mara saw the screen through the camera. That's not good, she said quietly. Ethan agreed. They're getting serious. The hangar speakers suddenly turned on again. A cold mechanical voice echoed across the entire mining base. Attention all personnel. A full security search will now begin. All buildings will be inspected. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. They're searching everything, he said. Mara's voice became urgent. You have to hide them better. Those soldiers won't stop until they find the twins. Ethan looked around his workshop quickly. There was no perfect hiding place here. The hangar was too small, too open, too easy to search. Then Ethan remembered something. Under the repair floor was an old maintenance tunnel built years ago for power cables. The mining company stopped using it long ago. Most workers probably forgot it even existed. But Ethan knew about it. He turned back to the twins. Come with me, he said gently. The twins followed him without hesitation. Ethan walked to the center of the workshop and pulled a metal lever. A square panel in the floor slowly opened, revealing a dark ladder leading underground. The twins looked down into the darkness. Ethan grabbed a small flashlight and climbed down first. Don't worry, he said softly. The twins carefully followed him. The maintenance tunnel was narrow but dry. Old cables ran along the walls, covered in dust. Ethan led them to a small corner where several large pipes created a hidden space. This will have to do, he said quietly. He placed the blanket on the floor and gave them a small light. You stay here. Stay quiet. The twins looked nervous but nodded slightly. One of them reached out and gently grabbed Ethan's hand. The human mechanic froze for a moment. The child's small glowing hand held his tightly. It was a silent request. Please come back, Ethan gave a small smile. I will, he said. Then he climbed back up the ladder and closed the floor panel. The hangar looked normal again, just a mechanic's messy workshop. A few minutes later, heavy footsteps approached the door. This time there were many soldiers. The door opened suddenly. 5 armored hunters walked inside. One of them carried a scanning device that hummed with blue light. The leader stepped forward. Human, he said coldly. We will search this building. Ethan shrugged. Go ahead, he replied calmly. The soldiers spread across the workshop. They checked shelves, machines, and storage boxes. The scanning device beeped softly as it searched for life signs. Ethan watched them carefully, but kept his face relaxed. Minutes passed. Finally the scanner soldier looked at his leader. No results, he said. The leader frowned. He looked around the hangar one last time. Then he turned and walked toward the door. Move to the next building, he ordered. The soldiers left. The door closed again. Ethan waited until the sound of their footsteps disappeared. Then he looked down at the metal floor. Underneath that floor, hidden in the dark tunnel, the royal twins of the Estrira Empire were waiting, but the hunters were still searching, and they were getting closer to the truth. The hangar became quiet again after the alien soldiers left. For several minutes, Ethan did not move. He stood near the workbench and watched the monitor screens carefully. Outside, the hunter ships were still flying slowly above the mining base. Searchlights moved across the empty buildings like giant white eyes. Ethan knew something important. Soldiers had not given up. They were only beginning their search. He took a slow breath and walked to the center of the workshop. The metal floor panel looked normal, hiding the ladder that led to the old maintenance tunnel. Under that floor, the alien twins were waiting. Ethan quietly opened the panel and climbed down the ladder. The tunnel was dark, except for the small light he had given the children. The twins were sitting close together between the large pipes. When they saw Ethan coming down the ladder, their glowing silver eyes became brighter. They looked relieved. Ethan knelt beside them. Still quiet? He asked softly. Of course, they did not understand the words, but they understood his gentle voice. The smaller twin reached out and touched his sleeve again. Ethan noticed something strange. The air around the twins felt slightly warm, and a few small pieces of dust were slowly floating above the ground. Their power was reacting to their emotions. Ethan remembered what Mara had said earlier. These children were important, too important. If the hunters captured them, the entire galaxy might face war. Ethan looked at the twins for a moment. Then he spoke quietly. "You two picked the wrong mechanic to hide with." The twins blinked, confused but calm. Ethan stood up again. "Stay here," he said. He climbed back up into the workshop and closed the floor panel. Now he had a problem. The hunters would search every building, again and again, until they found something. Sooner or later, they might discover the tunnel. Ethan needed to slow them down, maybe even scare them. He looked around his workshop. Old machines, broken drones. Half-repaired cargo bots. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind. Ethan smiled slightly. "If they want to search my hangar," he said quietly, "I'll give them something interesting to find." He walked quickly across the workshop and began working. First, he activated 3 old security drones that normally cleaned the hangar floor. Their metal arms moved slowly as they powered on. Then he reprogrammed them. Their simple cleaning tools became small cutting lasers. Next, Ethan connected several damaged power cells together and placed them near the hangar entrance. If someone stepped in the wrong place, the cells would explode with a bright flash of energy. Not enough to destroy the building, but enough to cause chaos. Finally, he turned off most of the lights in the workshop. The room became darker and more confusing. Ethan stepped back and looked at his work. "Good enough," he said. Just then, the outside monitor showed movement. Again, more soldiers were approaching. This time there were even more of them. Ethan leaned against the workbench and waited. The hangar door suddenly opened with force. 6 armored hunters entered the workshop. The leader looked around suspiciously. "You again," he said to Ethan. Ethan shrugged, still fixing machines. The soldiers spread out across the room. One of them stepped toward the entrance floor. A loud crack suddenly echoed through the hangar. The hidden power cells exploded in a bright flash of light. The soldier jumped back as sparks filled the air. "What was that?" one of them shouted. Before anyone could answer, the security drones suddenly activated. Their small cutting lasers turned on and began firing across the room. Thin red beams cut through the air. The soldiers quickly moved for cover. "Malfunctioning machines," the leader shouted. Ethan raised his hands calmly. "Hey, I told the mining company those drones were broken," he said. The drones continued flying around the room, creating confusion. One soldier fired his weapon and destroyed a drone in midair. The machine crashed into a metal shelf with a loud bang. The leader glared at Ethan. "You should repair your equipment better, human." Ethan smiled slightly. "I keep telling them that." After a few tense moments, the remaining drones were shut down. The soldiers looked around the hangar again, but the chaos had slowed them down. Their scanner device beeped softly but showed no clear results. Finally, the leader stepped back. "This building is clear," he said. The soldiers began leaving the hangar. Before stepping outside, the leader turned and looked at Ethan one more time. "You should leave this planet soon, human," he said. "Dangerous things are happening here." Ethan nodded. Double quotes, "Thanks for the advice." The soldiers left. The hangar door closed again. Ethan waited several seconds before moving. Then he walked to the center of the workshop and opened the floor panel again. The twins looked up from the tunnel. They had heard the explosions and strange noises above. They looked worried. Ethan smiled gently. "It's okay," he said. "The scary aliens are gone again." The twins slowly climbed up into the workshop. One of them looked around at the broken drone on the floor. Then she looked up at Ethan. For the first time, the twins seemed to understand something important. This human was not just protecting them. He was fighting for them, And Ethan Cole had already made his decision. He was not going to run away, not this time. The hangar slowly became quiet again after the soldiers left. Broken drone parts were scattered across the floor, and small sparks still flickered from damaged wires. Ethan walked around the workshop, checking the doors and monitors carefully. Outside, the hunter ships were still moving above the mining base like dark shadows. They had not given up. Ethan knew they would return again. He looked at the twins standing beside the workbench. They were watching him with wide silver eyes. The smaller twin stepped closer and gently touched the broken drone on the floor. Her glowing fingers brushed the metal dot. Suddenly, the drone lifted slightly into the air. Ethan stopped walking and stared. The drone floated for a few seconds, spinning slowly in the air like a toy. Then it dropped back onto the ground with a small clang. The twin quickly pulled her hand back. She looked nervous again. Ethan walked closer and knelt beside them. "So you really can move things with your mind," he said quietly. The twins did not understand his words, but they understood his calm voice. They were no longer as afraid of him as before. In fact, they seemed to feel safe near him. Ethan rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "If those hunters knew how powerful you two are," he said softly, "they would never stop searching." The twins looked at each other. Then the taller twin pointed toward the roof. Ethan followed her finger. "What?" he asked. Then he heard it. A deep rumbling sound above the hangar. Ethan rushed to the monitor screen. His eyes widened. Immediately, 3 large hunter ships had landed around the mining yard. Even worse, dozens of soldiers were now moving through the buildings. "This is bad," Ethan whispered. The hunters were no longer just searching. They were preparing to take control of the entire base. That meant they would check every underground tunnel, every hidden space, every storage room. Sooner or later, they would find the maintenance tunnel. Ethan turned back toward the twins. "We need to leave," he said quickly. Of course they did not understand the words, but they could see the urgency in his face. Ethan grabbed a small backpack and filled it with food packs, water, and a flashlight. Then he walked to the back wall of the workshop. There was a large metal panel there that looked like part of the wall. But Ethan knew it was actually an old emergency exit used years ago by miners. He opened it. Behind the panel was a narrow corridor leading toward the desert outside the base. "If we reach the old canyon," Ethan said quietly, "we might avoid their scanners." The twins watched him closely. They trusted him. But before Ethan could lead them into the corridor, a sudden loud explosion shook the hangar. Boom! Dust fell from the ceiling. The twins jumped in fear. Ethan looked at the monitor again. One of the hunter ships had fired a warning blast at another building. The soldiers were becoming impatient. "They're losing patience," Ethan said. Then something unexpected happened. One of the twins suddenly grabbed Ethan's arm tightly. Her glowing skin lines began to shine brighter. The air around them felt strange. Small tools on the workbench began to vibrate. Ethan noticed immediately. "Hey, calm down," he said softly. But the twin looked terrified. Outside, another explosion echoed across the mining base. Boom! The loud sound made the twins panic. Suddenly, the entire workshop filled with energy. Metal objects lifted from the tables. Bolts, tools, broken drone parts. Everything began floating in the air. Ethan stared in shock. The twins' hidden power was awakening. Their silver eyes were glowing brighter now. The floating objects began spinning slowly around them. "If that power gets stronger, the hunters will notice," Ethan said quietly. He slowly stepped closer. "Hey, look at me," he said softly. The twins' breathing was fast. They were losing control. Machines on the walls flickered. Lights turned on and off. Ethan knelt in front of them and spoke in the calmest voice he could. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe." The twins looked at him. For a moment the floating object shook violently in the air. Then Ethan gently placed his hands on their shoulders. "You're not alone," he whispered. The twins stared at him, slowly. The glowing light in their skin began to fade. The floating tools dropped back onto the tables and floor. The strange energy disappeared. The workshop became quiet again. Ethan let out a slow breath. "Good," he said softly. The twins were calm again, but Ethan now understood something very important. These children were far more powerful than anyone realized, and if the hunters captured them, that power could be used for terrible things. Ethan stood up and grabbed the backpack again. "All right," he said quietly. "It's time to go." Outside, the hunter soldiers continued searching the mining base, but this time, the twins would not be waiting for them. The cold wind of Carinine blew across the empty desert as Ethan led the alien twins through the narrow canyon. Outside the mining base, behind them, the mining buildings were small dark shapes in the distance. The hunter ships still hovered above the base like black birds, watching their prey. Ethan moved carefully between the tall rocks. The canyon walls blocked most scanner signals, which meant the hunters would have trouble tracking them here. Still, Ethan did not relax. "Just a little farther," he said quietly. The twins followed closely behind him. Their small glowing skin lines were faint in the darkness, like soft silver light moving through the shadows. They were tired. Very tired, but they kept walking. After almost an hour, Ethan finally stopped near a group of large stone pillars that protected a small open space in the canyon. "This should be safe for now," he said. He placed the backpack on the ground and gave the twins some food and water. They sat down beside him and began eating quietly. For the first time that night, Ethan allowed himself to breathe normally. The stars above Carinine shined brightly in the clear sky. For a moment everything felt peaceful, but Ethan knew the hunters would eventually realize what happened. When they searched the hangar again and found the empty tunnel, they would know the twins had escaped. They would start searching the desert. Ethan looked at the communication device in his hand. Mara should be arriving soon. He activated the device. After a few seconds, Mara's face appeared on the small screen. "Ethan," she said quickly, "I'm entering the Carinine system now." "Where are you?" "In the Western Canyon," Ethan replied. "The twins are safe." Mara looked relieved. "Good. I'll land near your position in 15 minutes. But listen, those hunter ships are still in orbit. They're watching everything." Ethan nodded. "I figured." He ended the call and looked back at the twins. They had finished eating and were sitting quietly beside him. The smaller twin looked up at the stars. Then she slowly leaned against Ethan's arm. Ethan froze for a moment. He had not expected that. But he did not move away. Instead, he sat quietly with them. Something strange filled his chest again. For years, Ethan had lived alone, fixing machines and avoiding people. But now 2 small alien children trusted him more than anyone else in the galaxy. 15 minutes later, a soft humming sound came from above the canyon. Ethan looked up. Sleek cargo ships slowly descended between the rock walls. The ship landed gently on the canyon floor. The side door opened. Mara stepped out and walked toward them. When she saw the twins, her expression became soft. "So it's true," she said quietly. "The royal twins are alive." The children watched her carefully but stayed close to Ethan. Mara noticed this and smiled slightly. "I guess they've chosen their protector." Ethan shrugged. They didn't have many choices. Just then another sound came from the sky. A loud engine roar echoed across the canyon. Ethan and Mara both looked up quickly. 2 black hunter ships had appeared above the canyon entrance. "They found us," Mara said. The ships began lowering toward the ground. Armed soldiers prepared to land. Ethan looked at the twins. They were frightened again. He stepped in front of them. Mara quickly spoke. "Get them inside my ship. I'll prepare the stealth drive." Ethan nodded and guided the twins toward the cargo ramp. But before they could enter the ship, The hunter soldiers landed in the canyon. Their leader stepped forward. "Hand over the royal twins," the alien commander said coldly. Ethan stood still. "No," he replied calmly. The soldiers raised their weapons. The twins clung tightly to Ethan's jacket. For a moment everything was silent. Then the twins' glowing lines began shining brighter again. The air filled with energy. Small stones lifted from the ground. The soldiers looked surprised, but Ethan gently knelt beside the twins. "It's okay," he said softly. "You don't need to fight." The twins looked at him. Slowly, the glowing light faded again. Mara shouted from the ship, "Ethan!" Now, Ethan quickly picked up the twins and ran into the cargo ship. The ramp closed behind them. The ship engines roared loudly as the stealth drive activated. Outside, the hunter ships fired their weapons, but the cargo ship suddenly disappeared into the night sky. Minutes later, the ship entered deep space. Inside the quiet cargo bay, the twins sat beside Ethan again. They looked at him with calm silver eyes. For a long moment they were silent. Then the smaller twin spoke a single soft word: "Stay." Ethan blinked in surprise. It was the first word they had spoken. Mara looked back from the pilot's seat. "Well," she said with a smile, "I think they've decided." Ethan looked at the twins again, the future rulers of the Astraira Empire. Two powerful alien children who trusted only one person, a lonely human mechanic. Ethan sighed softly. "Looks like I'm not going back to fixing mining machines," he said. The twins smiled slightly and held his hands, and as the ship traveled deeper into the stars, a new story began across the galaxy. The story of the human who protected the royal twins, the story of a mechanic who became their guardian, and perhaps their family.